Watch. You arrive at a crime scene, a pickup truck abandoned in the middle of the desert. Inside, everything is overturned, clear signs of a robbery, except the most valuable items, a secured laptop and expensive surveying equipment, are sitting right in plain view, untouched. Then you notice a shell casing in the sand, the perfect evidence of a gunshot. Violence, something that should set the direction of the entire investigation. But when you pick it up, it's covered in frost, in a 40-degree desert heat, and around it, no blood, no body, not even a bullet mark. Next, in the salt, you see tire tracks, clear, distinct patterns proving the victim met someone else here, someone driving a heavier vehicle. Except when you follow those tracks, they end 20 meters before reaching the truck, the ground between them smooth, untouched, as if the second car simply stopped existing. This isn't just a crime scene. It's a collision report between reality and something that stopped following its own rules. And the most disturbing question isn't who did it, but what if it can happen again? In the archived file number 78, Toole County, Utah, the first statement wasn't written by law enforcement. It came from a civilian. Filed on September 4, 2008, recorded by a sheriff's deputy, spoken by Derek Hammond, 46 years old, an amateur geologist, and self-described treasure hunter. His words were brief, factual. At approximately 2 p.m., I was in Sector Bravo 7 of the Bonneville Salt Flats, about 3 kilometers east of the old Highway 80. Weather clear, air temperature 40 degrees Celsius. Statement continued. I was conducting a search for metallic objects using a standard Garrett Ace 250 metal detector. At a depth of approximately 5 centimeters beneath the salt crust, the device produced a steady signal. I dug with a hand trowel and retrieved the object, a spent pistol casing. It was unusually cold to the touch, covered with a thin layer of white frost that evaporated within seconds after exposure to air. Hammond found the detail unsettling and immediately called the sheriff's office. In the initial report, the note about frost in 40-degree desert heat was downgraded to a footnote, marked subjective perception of the witness. But when Deputy Adam Riley arrived on site at 3:12 p.m., his attention wasn't on the shell casing, it was on something else. 800 meters to the north, on a perfectly flat, blinding white surface, stood a vehicle, a lone Ford Ranger, dark blue, 1999 model year. From Riley's patrol log, Unit 052. The vehicle was parked without visible violation, doors unlocked, ignition keys missing. Visual inspection revealed interior disorder, glove compartment open, contents, maps, registration documents, insurance forms, scattered across the floor and passenger seat. White salt residue observed on the driver's seat. No visible signs of struggle, violence, blood, or any biological trace. Registration returned to 1. Samuel Lawrence Cole, 38, resident of Ogden, Utah. At 5 p.m., a bulletin was distributed to all patrol units, classified as abandoned vehicle under suspicious circumstances. The next morning, Cole's sister, Emily Carter, filed a missing person report. She stated that Samuel had left for a field trip to the Bonneville Salt Flats 3 days earlier and stopped responding to calls on the evening of September 3rd. Background check showed nothing unusual. Samuel Cole, divorced, no children, employed as assistant technician for Apex Surveying, a private geomapping contractor. Company records confirmed he was officially on leave. Yet among the paperwork found in his truck was a private work permit issued by the Bureau of Land Management. Field of activity, handwritten in ink, geomagnetic mapping and sample collection on private tract GB 784. The parcel measured exactly 100 meters per side, registered to his late father, Dr. Alastair Cole. The first major inconsistency in the investigation appeared after the forensic team completed the itemized vehicle inventory. From the report of forensic analyst James Wu, dated September 6, 2008. Despite clear signs of intrusion inside the cabin, The most valuable items remained untouched. A Panasonic Toughbook, CF30 laptop, estimated value $3,000, and a Trimble R8 precision GPS receiver, valued over $5,000, were located on the passenger seat. In the truck bed, a complete surveying kit, digital theodolite tripods, and measurement poles. Combined value exceeding $15,000. This fact casts doubt on theft as the primary motive. Parallel to this, investigators examined the site more closely and made a second discovery. Analysis of tire patterns on the salt surface revealed that another set of tracks led to the location of Samuel Cole's pickup. They belonged to a heavier vehicle, most likely an all-wheel drive SUV. According to the scene report, both tire paths ran parallel and converged precisely at the point where the Ford Ranger was found, strongly suggesting a planned meeting or a pursuit. At that stage, the investigation took on a more defined shape, consistent with a potential abduction or violent disappearance. Detectives began mapping Cole's personal and professional life, searching for anyone he could have met that day. The name of his father, Dr. Alistair Cole, pushed the inquiry in an unexpected direction. A request to the U.S. Geological Survey archives returned a nearly 30-year-old file, an internal memorandum dated June 12, 1979. Findings of a disciplinary committee against staff geologist Dr. Alistair Cole. Case number 78. Dr. A. Cole was charged with violation of research protocol and submission of unverified data. His report claimed the discovery in the Bonneville Flats region of a unique iron meteorite fragment, a siderite of abnormally high density and atypical elemental composition. Subsequent verification attempts failed. Samples provided by Dr. Cole were lost in transit to the testing facility, and field coordinates he had recorded did not yield a second trace of the object. The committee concluded that Dr. Cole's actions resulted either from a professional error or a deliberate falsification. Termination of contract recommended. The committee chair was a Dr. Marcus Thorne from the Journal of Detective Frank Miller, entry dated September 7, 2008. Conducted phone interview with Marcus Thorne, currently CEO and founder of Thorne Mining Corporation. Thorne confirmed he remembered the Alistair Cole case, described him as a brilliant but obsessive scientist destroyed by his own theories. When asked whether he knew Samuel Cole or had heard of any attempts to continue his father's work, Thorne replied negatively. His tone remained steady, no trace of hesitation. He volunteered to provide an official statement the following week. By the end of the first week, the investigation had reached the same wall familiar to so many missing persons cases. A vanished subject, a scene suggesting possible violence, a potential suspect with an indirect motive reaching decades into the past, and yet no body, no direct evidence, no witnesses. Every fragment, the scattered papers, the untouched equipment, the second set of tracks, reinforced a single working theory. Samuel Cole had found what his father once claimed to find, and someone who knew it, likely Marcus Thorne, made sure he would never speak of it. Everything pointed to a rational, if brutal, conclusion. Everything seemed to fit, except for one minor note buried in a footnote of the first report, a single spent shell casing found in the desert that felt cold to the touch in 40-degree heat. September 10, 2008. Detective Frank Miller and his partner sat in the spotless conference room of Thorne Mining Corporation, across from Marcus Thorne himself. He was 67 years old, but looked at least 10 years younger. Tailored suit, measured gestures, calm, deliberate tone. "Yes," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "I remember Alistair Cole. A tragic story. He was obsessed with finding what he called the mother vein of a meteorite field, convinced that somewhere in Utah lay a fragment that could redefine science. When he failed to produce proof, his career collapsed. I truly pitied the man, but protocol is protocol. Thorne's alibi for September 3rd was simple and conveniently unverifiable. He claimed he'd spent the entire day alone at his lake house near Tahoe. Neighbors confirmed his car was there, but no one could swear he hadn't left for a few hours. When asked about any possible connection, he smiled faintly. "Detective, if I wanted Alistair's discovery, I'd have taken it 30 years ago, back when I ran the geological survey. Why would I chase his son through the desert over some mythical rock when I already own a corporation worth millions?" The logic held. And for a few days, the investigation stalled again. Then a new lead shifted the focus, away from murder. A financial audit of Samuel Cole's accounts revealed one troubling fact. A week before his disappearance, on August 27th, he closed his savings account and withdrew $15,200 in cash. That detail reshaped the case. A new theory took over. Samuel Cole had staged his own disappearance, possibly to extort Marcus Thorne, or simply to start over. The apparent struggle, the second set of tire prints, it could all have been part of the act. That rational, comfortable explanation lasted exactly 3 days. On September 13th, 2 forensic reports landed on Detective Miller's desk. They didn't just raise new questions, they destroyed the very idea of coincidence. The first came from a trace analyst for the Bureau of Land Management. 4 pages. Concise, unambiguous. Confirmed, the second vehicle was a 4-wheel drive SUV, likely a Chevrolet Suburban or equivalent model, based on track width and tread design. However, the key finding: the tire impressions terminate abruptly, exactly 21 meters from the Ford Ranger. No brake marks, no skid patterns, no sign of acceleration, rotation, or drag. Between the endpoint of the SUV tracks and Cole's vehicle, absolute smoothness, no footprints, no drag lines, no surface disturbance of any kind. Physical transfer of a person or cargo between 2 vehicles across this stretch without leaving any trace? Impossible. The current scenario contradicts fundamental principles of physics and forensic science. The second report arrived from the State Forensic Lab. It concerned the very same 9mm casing. Ballistic examination confirmed it was fired from a Glock pistol, one of the most common sidearms in the U.S. Nothing unusual there. But the chemical and metallographic analysis transformed the evidence from a crime scene clue into a genuine artifact. The casing showed signs of abnormal thermal exposure. The brass surface had undergone ultra-rapid cooling, creating a temporary microcrystalline pattern, frost-like in appearance. Calculations indicate that to produce this effect, the surface temperature of the object must drop to -30 to 40 degrees Celsius within less than 1 second. This phenomenon could not be explained by any known atmospheric event, nor by any standard firearm discharge process. The source of such localized and instantaneous cooling remained unidentified. Silence fell over the sheriff's office. The staged disappearance theory was crumbling. No person wishing to vanish could fabricate such evidence. The theory of murder, allegedly committed by Marcus Thorne, also fractured. How could he have made his SUV levitate over the salt flats? What weapon did he use to shoot cold? At the moment the investigation hit its logical dead end, the digital forensics unit finished examining the last item recovered from Samuel's vehicle, his personal Olympus voice recorder. There was only one file on it, created on September 3rd at 5:41 p.m. Its length, 3 minutes and 21 seconds. What the detectives heard defied anything they had encountered throughout their entire careers. Below is the official transcription of audio file 78281. Recording starts at 0000. A continuous high-frequency beep of a metal detector in operation. Measured footsteps crunching on salt crust. Samuel Cole's breathing. Steady, calm. Samuel Cole, 0032. It's here. It's incredible density. Father was right. He was. Voice breaks. 0105. The metal detector's tone shifts. It becomes continuous. Pitch rises. Against this sound, a new low-vibrating monotone hum emerges. Source unclear. It seems to come from everywhere at once. Samuel Cole, 0128. Voice tense. What is that? Marcus, is that you? I know you were watching me. Come out. 0145. Distant sound of a heavy vehicle engine starting far behind. The hum grows louder, becoming the dominant sound on the recording. 021. The engine sound abruptly cuts off. The low-frequency hum peaks, causing audible distortion in the recorder microphone. Samuel's voice breaks into a scream. Samuel Cole, 021. No, what are you? Samuel's voice and background noises begin distorting. Speech turns into an indistinct modulated screech, like a tearing magnetic tape. 0219. A loud, dry click. Experts identify this as the sound of a pistol firing in immediate proximity to the microphone. 0220. Absolute silence. End of recording. 0321. The audio expert appending the transcript noted, the final 61 seconds of this recording represent a technical anomaly. It is not mere silence. The waveform analysis revealed a complete absence of any background noise, including the inherent hum of the recording device itself. It was a zero sound wave, an effect theoretically possible only in perfect vacuum conditions or within an anechoic chamber. Recording such silence in field conditions, impossible. That very evening, after the transcript was received, patrol officers conducting an additional search at Samuel Cole's house discovered a sealed envelope inside his desk drawer. Within it lay $15,200 in cash and a handwritten note addressed to his lawyers should Marcus Thorne attempt to interfere. The theory of an escape crumbled completely. Detective Miller closed the case for the night. No longer was there a suspect. There was a phenomenon. The audio recording stored in the evidence safe was not proof of a crime, but a 3-minute chronicle of a man stepping beyond the bounds of the known world. By November 2008, case number 7828CO was officially declared inactive. In American forensics, that was a euphemism for defeat. Samuel Cole was listed as missing under inexplicable circumstances. Marcus Thorne, after multiple interrogations and thorough reviews of his financial and communication records, was removed from the list of persons of interest. He had an alibi that was neither confirmable nor refutable, and a total absence of direct evidence against him. The final report, signed by Detective Frank Miller, was a masterpiece of bureaucratic language, masking complete bafflement. Despite exhaustive investigative measures, including trace analysis, ballistic, and audio forensic examinations, the circumstances of Mr. Cole's disappearance could not be established. The case was suspended, pending the emergence of new significant evidence. For the police, the story was over. But for Emily Carter, Samuel's sister, it was only just beginning. Emily was his polar opposite, not a technician, but a humanist. She worked as a senior archivist at the University of Utah Library. Her world consisted not of theodolites and GPS signals, but dusty shelves, catalog cards, and the gentle rustle of old paper. Distrustful of the official conclusion and driven by grief, she began her own investigation, using the only tools at her disposal: patience, methodical research, and access to archives. The police returned Samuel's belongings to her, including boxes containing the scientific archives of their father, Dr. Alastair Cole. Investigators had skimmed these papers, dismissing them as irrelevant ramblings of a disgraced scientist. But Emily spent weeks carefully parsing the chaotic legacy: stacks of handwritten notebooks, geological maps covered with complex mathematical formulas, and hundreds of pages of theoretical discourse. Here, she found what the police had missed. In a notebook from 1978, a year before his dismissal, Alastair Cole detailed his central, most heretical theory. "Bonneville is not merely a dried-up lake," he wrote. It is a geological parabolic reflector, a gigantic acoustic mirror. Its uniquely concave shape and the crystalline structure of the salt crust can catch and focus infrasound vibrations emanating from the Earth's crust. Most of the time, this energy dissipates, but under certain conditions, low humidity, high atmospheric pressure, and specific tectonic stress, the salt flats enter resonance. It begins to sing at a purity that cannot be heard, but can be felt. That very hum, described by her father, matched exactly the sound recorded on Samuel's voice recorder, but the theory became even stranger. Alistair believed the meteorite he found, the very stone Samuel was searching for, held the key. The siderite I discovered is not a passive object. Its anomalously high density and unique crystal lattice make it a perfect resonator, a tuner for these terrestrial vibrations. I call it the siderite string. When the external frequency matches its own, the string begins to vibrate, and this vibration produces not sound, but a localized distortion of physical constants, a brief anomaly where normal laws cease to apply. Alongside the pages were formulas and quick notes: temperature drop, Peltier effect, gravitational fluctuation, local curvature, acoustic wave suppression, vacuum collapse. Emily, lacking a physics background, saw the big picture. Her father, the geologist, had theoretically described 30 years ago all the unexplained phenomena recorded by forensic experts at her brother's disappearance site: the frost on the casing, the impossible tire tracks, as if the SUV became lighter for a few seconds and her brother heavier, and the zero wave at the end of the audio recording. This discovery pushed her further. If her father was right, then what happened to Samuel couldn't have been unique. It must have been a cyclical, recurring phenomenon. She began a systematic search through digital and paper archives using keywords from her father's notes: Bonneville, anomaly, unexplained disappearance, sound phenomenon. For weeks, she found nothing. Then, in a digitized archive of the Salt Lake Tribune, she stumbled upon a brief notice from August 17, 1953. The headline read, "Group of military cartographers missing." The article reported that 3 U.S. Air Force personnel conducting mapping operations on the Bonneville salt flats had failed to return to base. Their vehicle, a WLIS M38, had been found abandoned. The article quoted an Air Force spokesman who attributed the incident to adverse weather conditions and disorientation. Using her archivist credentials, Emily filed an official request with the National Archives to declassify the case details. 2 months later, she received a thin folder. Much of the documentation had been redacted with black marker, but what remained chilled her to the bone. The report on the vehicle's discovery mentioned strange frost on metal parts despite the daytime heat. A search pilot's testimony described hearing a strange low-frequency hum in his headset while flying over the search area. The pathologist's report, despite the absence of bodies for examination, included a request for information on the effects on humans of ultra-low frequencies and sudden gravitational shifts. The case was closed a month later, marked missing in the line of duty. The search area matched the parcel Dark Slobby 7184, registered to her father. The cycle came full circle, but then the theory grew even stranger. Alistair believed the meteorite he had found, the very stone Samuel was searching for, played a key role. The siderite I discovered is not a passive object. Its anomalously high density and unique crystal lattice make it the perfect resonator, a tuner for terrestrial vibrations. I call it the siderite string. When an external frequency matches its own, the string begins to vibrate. And this vibration generates not sound, but a localized distortion of physical constants, a fleeting anomaly where the familiar laws cease to apply. In the margins of the page, formulas and notes appeared: temperature drop, Peltier effect, gravitational fluctuation, local curvature, acoustic wave suppression, vacuum collapse. Emily, with no background in physics, saw the big picture. Her father, 30 years ago, had theoretically described all the inexplicable phenomena recorded by forensic teams at the site of her brother's disappearance. The frost on the casing, the impossible tire tracks, as if the SUV had become lighter for a few seconds, and her brother heavier, and the zero wave at the end of the audio recording. This discovery compelled her onward. If her father was right, then what happened to Samuel could not be unique. It had to be a cyclical, recurring phenomenon. She began a systematic search through digital and physical archives, using keywords from her father's notes. Bonneville, anomaly, unexplained disappearance, sound phenomenon. Weeks passed with no results. And then, in a digitized archive of the Salt Lake Tribune, she found a short note dated August 17, 1953. The headline read, "Group of military cartographers missing." The article detailed how 3 U.S. Air Force personnel conducting mapping operations on the Bonneville Salt Flats had failed to return to base. Their vehicle, a WLIS M38, had been found abandoned. The article quoted an Air Force spokesperson who attributed the incident to adverse weather and disorientation. Using her archivist status, Emily filed an official request with the National Archives to declassify the case records. 2 months later, she received a thin folder. Most of the documents were heavily redacted, but what remained chilled her profoundly. The report on the vehicle's discovery noted strange frost on the metal parts, despite the daytime heat. The search pilot's testimony described hearing a strange low-frequency hum in his headset while flying over the search area. The pathologist's report, although no bodies were recovered, requested information on the effects of ultra-low frequencies and abrupt gravitational shifts on humans. The case was closed a month later, marked "Missing in the Line of Duty." The search area coincided with her father's property, Dark Slobby 7184. The cycle had come full circle. It was the obsession of a scientist, dedicating the final chapter of his life's work. She was not about to approach the epicenter, the site marked as Nashprab 784. On her father's maps, another location was marked 5 kilometers west on a low rocky ridge. He called it the acoustic shadow, a point where, according to his calculations, destructive wave interference made observation relatively safe. On the night of November 20, 2012, Emily Carter sat by her deployed equipment on that ridge. The sky was clear, cold, and studded with stars slowly aligning into the positions her father had predicted. Excerpt from Emily Carter's field journal, time 23:45. All systems operational. Air temperature -2 degrees Celsius. Atmospheric pressure stable. Background seismic noise within normal limits. Seismic station 14 reporting. Planetary configuration nearly reached calculated point. No anomalies detected. Time 20:58. First signal. Seismograph S1 records low-frequency vibrations. Source sector Neb 700 S8 City 4. Amplitude weak. Frequency about 9 Hz. Not detected by regional seismic stations. A localized phenomenon, Sonum 3 out of 7. A hum recorded on audio tape. Matches exactly Samuel's voice recorder track. Magnetometers show chaotic needle fluctuations, SU 335A. Thermal imaging records sharp temperature drop at site. At the center of the zone, a perfectly round cold disk appears. Surface temperature fell from -5 to estimated at -40 degrees Celsius. Disk diameter about 30 meters. Visual telescope observation, SU 3048. Air above the cold disk shimmers. Distortion is not chaotic like heat shimmer, but structured, resembling waves. Phenomenon is stable. Continuing log. Then she saw what none of her father's forecasts had predicted. Headlights. A vehicle, heavy, dark SUV, slowly traveling down an old service road leading to the Salt Flat base. It stopped roughly a kilometer from the anomaly's epicenter. A man exited. Even at that distance, through night vision optics, Emily recognized him instantly. Marcus Thorne. He was no random observer. He moved with purpose as a man arriving for a scheduled meeting. He took equipment from his vehicle, a tripod-mounted device, aimed it at the shimmering anomaly center, and began measuring. He showed no fear. He was expecting this. At that moment, Emily understood. Thorne was not a murderer in the police sense. He was a parasite, clinging to someone else's discovery. He didn't steal the stone, he stole the knowledge about it. Perhaps he allowed Aleister Cole's career to collapse to keep the phenomenon a secret for himself alone. Perhaps he followed Samuel not to kill him, but to lead him to the exact point at the appointed hour. He was not a criminal. He was a priest of this cold, indifferent deity. And her brother, along with those soldiers from 53, were simply sacrifices offered at his altar. 0047 reads the last entry in her journal. The anomaly began to fade, temperatures evened out, the hum died down. An unidentified subject, presumed Thorne, packed up equipment, returned to his vehicle, and drove off southward. All data was preserved. Emily did not call anyone. What could she say? That the man the police exonerated came to the desert at night to witness a miracle? This story doesn't end with an arrest or exposure.
It ends with a report. A small gray-covered book Emily Carter self-published in a 200-copy run, titled The Cole Phenomenon, an analysis of cyclical events on the Bonneville Salt Flats. She distributed it to universities, scientific journals, and observatories. Most copies remained unopened on shelves. In the last chapter of her report, after all the charts, calculations, and testimonies, Emily wrote, "Thus, the existence of the phenomenon can be considered proven. It is cyclical in nature. Its occurrence can be predicted with astronomical precision. Yet its nature and purpose remain beyond our understanding. We do not know if it is an unknown natural phenomenon, a relic of ancient technology, or a signal addressed to unknown recipients. We know only its schedule. The next planetary configuration, identical to those observed in 1953, 2008, and 2012, will occur again. The mechanism is known, its operation inevitable. One question remains. On January 27, 2041, the string will vibrate once more. Who will be listening then? Thank you for watching this journey into the unknown. If you found this story compelling, consider subscribing and sharing with those who love mysteries that challenge our understanding of the world. Remember, the truth often lies beyond the edge of what we can explain. Stay curious, stay vigilant. Until next time, keep listening to the hidden melodies of the earth. Your attention helps keep the story alive. Thank you again for being part of this exploration.